Hello guys and welcome to Code in Orbit. In this video, I will show you how to implement expandable floating action button in your Flutter application. Once I click on it, this will appear, this will animate, and the actual button will disappear and the closing button X will appear instead of it. And once you click X, it will return them and this will appear again. And once you click on any of those, for this tutorial, we're just gonna print the actual icon. This is shared, this is profile, and this is add. So before we get started, if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our content. Now let's get started. Alright, to get started, I've already created an application. There's nothing in it, just an app bar and a floating action button with add icon, and it does nothing for now. Now to get started, first we're not gonna use any library for this animation. We're gonna build it ourselves. So let's go to the lib and let's create a new file and let's call it Expandable Fab. Now let's import material, letter material, and let's create a stateful and let's call it Expandable Fab. Alright, now before we do anything, inside here, let's create final list of widgets and let's call it children. And let's also create final double distance and let's add them in the constructor and let's make them required. We're gonna use the children since we have to show many fab icon, and the distance to know the distance between them. So in the state, we're gonna say with single ticker provider state mixin, and here we're gonna create late animation controller and we're gonna call it controller, and we're gonna create late animation and as double, and we're gonna call it expand animation, and we're gonna create bool and let's call it open is equal to false. Now in the init state, we're gonna define the controller, and the controller equals to animation controller. Inside here, we're gonna say the value, if it's open, then it's equal to 1.0, otherwise it's 0.0. And we're gonna give it duration, and let's say const duration by milliseconds, and let's say 250 milli, not micro. Alright, and the vsync is actually this. Alright, so now we're gonna define the expand animation, which is equal to curved animation, and the parent is the controller, and the curve is curves dot fast in slow, fast out, slow in, and we're gonna also give it reverse curve, which is curves ease out quad, and that's it. Now we're gonna create void and let's call it toggle. It doesn't take anything, and we're just gonna set the state. We're gonna say open is equal to different from open. We're gonna just toggle the open, and if open, we're gonna say controller dot forward, otherwise we're gonna say controller dot reverse, and that's it for the toggle. Alright, and now we're gonna create the dispose method, and inside the dispose we're gonna say controller dot dispose, and now in the build method we're gonna create a stack, and inside the stack we're gonna give it alignment, which is alignment dot bottom right, the same position as normal floating action button. Then we're gonna give it children. Now before we give it children, let's create the children methods. So let's create the close method. Let's say void tab to close and it doesn't take anything. Inside here we're gonna return sized box, and the sized box height is 55 and width 55 as well. And let me give you a little bit of space. Alright, and it isn't void, it's a widget, so we have to return a widget, and we're gonna give it a child, and this child is center, and inside the center we're gonna give it a child of material, and we're gonna use the material since we want the show effect to appear. So inside the material we're gonna give it a shape, which is const circle border, and we're gonna also give it clip behavior since we want the clip the click action be as circular. So we're gonna give it clip dot anti-alias, and then we're gonna give it elevation, let's say 4, and we're gonna give it a child, and this child is equal because we want to have tap effect. So inside here we're gonna say on tap, and the on tap takes the toggle method, and let's make this toggle method private as well. So let's go up and make it private. Okay, now after the on tap we're gonna give it a child, and let's say padding, and padding normal 8.0, and let's give it a child of icon, and inside